They say leadership begins long before you ever speak a word. It begins in presence, in the quiet energy that walks into the room before you do. The truth is, people don't follow titles. They follow tone. They don't trust what you say until they feel who you are beneath your words. Most people believe great leaders talk the most, but the reality is different. True leaders speak the least, yet say the most. Their strength isn't in volume. It's in clarity. Their power doesn't come from dominance. It comes from calm conviction. There's a silent authority in the way real leaders talk. It's in the steadiness of their breath before they speak, in the pauses that make others lean in the way they use simplicity to express complex truths. They know that words are not just tools of communication. They are instruments of energy. Every tone carries emotion. Every phrase carries intent. We often overlook the subtle art of speech. We chase charisma, but forget authenticity. We rehearse lines, but neglect presence. You can learn to speak eloquently, but if your words don't come from inner stillness, they will never truly reach anyone. Leadership isn't about crafting perfect sentences. It's about speaking from a centered mind and a grounded heart. When a leader speaks, they don't rush. They are comfortable with silence because they understand its value. They know that silence is not emptiness. It's space. Space for others to think. Space for meaning to settle. Space for trust to grow. The insecure talk to fill silence. The wise talk to give silence purpose. The psychology of how leaders talk is not a science of words. It's an understanding of presence. Their calm tone communicates safety. Their measured speech builds respect. Their choice of words mirrors their clarity of mind. People are not drawn to noise. They are drawn to depth. And depth is always quiet. Think about the voices that change your life, the ones that left you thinking long after they stopped speaking. They didn't shout, they didn't rush, and they didn't seek attention. They spoke with weight because they lived what they said. Every word was anchored in experience. Every pause invited reflection. A true leader doesn't persuade you to agree. They guide you to see. They don't speak at you. They speak to the part of you that already knows the truth. That's why their words linger, not as commands, but as echoes of understanding. And here's the paradox. The more power you hold within, the less you need to prove it through speech. The more confident your spirit, the softer your tone becomes. You stop needing to convince, because your energy already communicates what words cannot. The silent authority in words comes from alignment, when your tone, intention, and truth all move in the same direction. When you no longer speak to perform, but to serve. That is what separates ordinary speakers from leaders. If you want to speak like a leader, you must first feel like one. And feeling like one has nothing to do with hierarchy. It has everything to do with integrity. Integrity gives your words substance. Consistency gives them rhythm. Presence gives them life. Your voice carries your history. Every emotion you've healed, every truth you've accepted, every fear you've overcome, they all shape the vibration behind your words. That's why when leaders speak, they don't just communicate. They transmit something, a frequency of calm certainty that others can feel even without understanding why. You can hear confidence. You can hear self-respect. You can hear peace. That's what people respond to, not the words, but the energy beneath them. So before learning how to talk like a leader, learn how to be one. In silence, in thought, in action, because speech is simply an extension of state. When your inner world is calm, your outer words will carry quiet power. When you speak with grounded intention, people don't just listen, they remember, because the voice of true leadership is not loud. It's still. It doesn't rise above others. It rises within them. This is where our journey begins, in the stillness before speech. In understanding that leadership starts not with what you say, but with who you are before the words ever leave your lips. Now let's go deeper into how the way you speak defines how people see you, and why your voice can open hearts or close them before your message even begins. The way you speak is not just communication. It's identity in motion. Before people know your story, before they see your achievements, before they understand your mind, they hear your voice. And in that first instant, something subtle happens. Their brain begins to map who you are, your tone, your pace, your pauses, your choice of words. They all paint a picture of your inner world. People don't just listen to what you say. They listen for who you are behind what you say. They listen for conviction, for calm, for trust. They listen to feel whether you believe in your own words. The way you speak is the mirror of your mind. A scattered tone reveals internal chaos. A rushed rhythm reveals anxiety. A calm, measured voice reflects clarity. We think people are persuaded by logic, but in truth, they are moved by energy. In every conversation, your voice communicates one of two things: power or insecurity. Not power over others, but the quiet power being grounded in yourself. When that kind of power speaks, it doesn't need to dominate. It doesn't need to impress. It simply is. And people feel it instantly, even if they can't explain why. That's why real leaders don't chase authority through words. They embody it. Their tone carries weight not because it's loud, but because it's centered. It comes from a place of inner knowing, a steady alignment between thought and emotion. You see, everyone can talk, but few can hold space with their voice. Holding space means allowing others to feel safe enough to open up. It means creating an atmosphere where people feel seen, not judged, guided, not controlled. And that ability begins with the way you speak. The insecure speaker uses words to seek approval. The grounded speaker uses words to create connection. There's a moment when you hear someone truly present, where you can sense it, that stillness behind the sound, that composure that doesn't waver. You can feel they aren't performing, they're simply being. And that being is what earns trust faster than any polished speech ever could. When you talk from your ego, people resist. When you talk from your truth, people lean in. Because the world has enough noise. What it's starving for is sincerity. And sincerity cannot be rehearsed. It can only be felt. A leader's voice has a rhythm, not mechanical, but natural. It carries humility and self-respect at once. It doesn't rush to prove. It pauses to understand. It doesn't fill silence with explanations. It lets silence deepen meaning. Sometimes the most powerful thing a leader says isn't even a word. It's a pause. That sacred space between sentences where the listener's mind opens, where emotion settles, where the message sinks in. To speak like a leader, you must first slow down. Not your speech, but your being. Because rushing is a symptom of doubt. When you are certain of your message, you don't chase understanding. You allow it to unfold. There's a calm confidence that leaders radiate when they speak. It's not arrogance. It's alignment. It's the sound of someone who has met themselves. And that is magnetic. People can sense when your words are borrowed, and when they are born from reflection. They can sense when you're talking to fill time, or when you're speaking from genuine experience. And the moment they sense authenticity, you earn not just attention, but trust. That trust is the invisible bridge between your voice and their hearts. And it's built not on clever phrasing, but on emotional integrity. Leadership begins in the unseen, in how you think, how you breathe, how you listen. Because words are only the surface. The real message lives underneath, in energy and presence, in emotional honesty. Think of your voice as a frequency. Every word carries a vibration, one that reflects your emotional state. When you speak with frustration, you transmit tension. When you speak with peace, you transmit strength. When you speak with love, you transmit safety. That's why people follow leaders whose presence feels calm, not chaotic. Because calm energy feels like truth. And truth, no matter how softly spoken, always commands attention. You can see this in every aspect of human interaction. A teacher who speaks with respect makes students listen. A parent who explains instead of shouting makes children feel seen. A manager who pauses before responding makes a team feel valued. This is how leaders are formed, not by authority, but by awareness. If your tone makes people shrink, you're not leading, you're controlling. If your tone makes people open, reflect, and trust, you're leading. The art of leadership speech lies not in complexity, but in clarity. Because clarity creates confidence in you and in those who listen. When you speak with clarity, people stop analyzing your words and start feeling your message. You no longer sound like someone trying to convince. You sound like someone who knows. And knowing, when grounded in humility, becomes wisdom. So, how do you speak with this kind of authority? You begin by understanding that every sentence is a choice. Every word you speak either builds or breaks trust. Every tone either creates connection or distance. Before you talk, ask yourself, am I speaking to impress or to express? Am I talking to be heard or to make others feel seen? Those small shifts change everything. Leaders understand that their words are a form of energy exchange. So they choose words that elevate, not diminish. They choose tone that calms, not provokes. They choose silence that empowers, not isolates. Because in the end, it's not about how much you say. It's about how deeply your words live in others once you stop speaking. The most memorable voices in history didn't echo because of volume. They echoed because of truth. Your voice can do the same if you align it with purpose. The secret isn't to sound powerful. It's to sound real. Because when you sound real, people don't just listen. They trust, and through that trust, they follow. And when people follow not because they must, but because they believe, that's when leadership truly begins. The way you speak defines how people see you. Not because it changes who you are, but because it reveals who you already are. Your tone is a window into your soul's discipline. Your words are reflections of your emotional world. When you speak with presence, you become magnetic without effort, because truth, when spoken calmly, is the most persuasive sound in existence. So before you craft your next sentence, pause, breathe, feel the stillness before you speak. That stillness is your strength. Let your words rise from there, slow, intentional, and sincere. And soon you'll notice something. You won't need to speak louder to be heard. You'll only need to speak clearer to be understood. Now that you've felt how words reveal inner presence, let's go deeper. In the next part, we'll explore the emotional psychology of leadership communication, how leaders speak not just to minds, but to emotions, and how empathy becomes a hidden language of influence. Every conversation has two layers: what is said and what is felt. Most people only listen to words. Leaders, however, listen to the emotions beneath them. They understand that behind every tone lies a story. Behind every silence lies meaning. And behind every reaction lies a need. The psychology of leadership communication is not about strategy. It's about sensitivity. It's about learning to speak to the invisible, to emotions, to energy, to unspoken fears that shape the way people hear you. Because human beings are not logical first. They are emotional. Logic explains. Emotion connects. If you speak only to the mind, you may be understood. But if you speak to the heart, you will be remembered. Emotional intelligence is what transforms ordinary speech into leadership. It's what turns a manager into a mentor, a speaker into a guide, a communicator into a connector. Because people don't remember what you said, they remember how you made them feel. When a leader speaks, the real dialogue doesn't happen in the air between words. It happens in the emotional space they create. That's why tone matters more than vocabulary. A soft, I understand, can calm a storm. A careless word can destroy trust. The emotional temperature of your voice sets the mood of every interaction. You can learn every speaking technique in the world, but if you don't understand emotions, your own and others, you'll never truly connect. The emotional psychology of leadership begins with awareness. What am I feeling right now? What might they be feeling? What emotion is driving this moment? Fear, pride, doubt, or hope? A true leader does not just react to emotion. They read it, they respect it, and they regulate it. They know that emotional control is not suppression. It's composure. It's the ability to stay calm when others are triggered, to listen when others defend, to empathize without losing direction. Because leadership communication is not about having the right words. It's about carrying the right energy. Think about it. You met people who speak kindly, yet leave you uneasy, and others who say little, yet somehow make you feel safe. That's emotional energy. It's not what you say, it's what your presence transmits. Your emotional state bleeds into your tone, your timing, your phrasing. That's why mastering speech begins with mastering emotion. If your heart is calm, your voice will naturally carry stability. If your mind is centered, your message will naturally carry clarity. But when you speak from frustration or insecurity, no amount of vocabulary can disguise it. People feel before they think. They sense before they analyze. They mirror your emotions without realizing it. That's the science of emotional contagion, a silent truth that governs all communication. The energy you carry is contagious. When you speak from tension, you spread tension. When you speak from peace, you spread peace. Great leaders understand this intuitively. They know that every word is an emotional transaction, so they choose their currency wisely. Instead of reacting, they reflect. Instead of defending, they invite dialogue. Instead of commanding, they inspire. Empathy is their language. Not weakness, empathy. Because empathy is awareness with compassion. It's the bridge that allows people to feel understood even before they agree. Leaders don't just tell people what to do. They help them feel seen in the process. And once someone feels seen, they open up. That's when influence begins. The emotionally intelligent leader doesn't need to control outcomes. They guide emotions. They sense when to push and when to pause, when to challenge and when to comfort. They understand that emotions are not obstacles. They are information. Anger means something needs protection. Fear means something feels unsafe. Resistance means something feels misunderstood. When you listen beneath the words, you begin to understand these emotional codes. And once you understand them, you can lead with precision, not through pressure, but through presence. Emotional intelligence also means recognizing your own triggers, because your tone will always betray your inner state. A voice that trembles with irritation doesn't just convey anger, it transfers it. A voice that stays calm under pressure communicates strength beyond words. Leadership communication requires emotional self-awareness. Ask yourself, what emotion is coloring my message right now? Is it love or fear? Confidence or control? Am I speaking from my higher self or from my wound? The difference is felt instantly because emotions are frequencies, and people always tune into the one you broadcast. When you speak from peace, your presence becomes magnetic. People sense something steady in you, a groundedness they can trust. They may not know why, but they feel safe. And safety is a foundation of influence. That's why true leaders don't aim to impress. They aim to reassure. They speak to remind others of their own strength, their own clarity, their own worth. Their words uplift because their energy doesn't compete. It supports. In every conversation, the emotionally aware leader is not trying to win. They're trying to understand. Because understanding creates alignment, and alignment creates loyalty. When people feel emotionally aligned with you, they will walk beside you, not behind you. That's how leadership communication transforms teams, relationships, and even strangers. It creates harmony, not hierarchy. And yet, emotional communication is not always soft. Sometimes it's firm, but never cruel. Sometimes it's direct, but never demeaning. Because when your words come from respect, even truth feels kind. Emotional mastery gives your speech depth, the ability to comfort without pleasing, to guide without forcing, to correct without humiliating. It's the quiet strength that makes people listen, even when the message is difficult. Think of every great leader, spiritual, political, or social. Their speeches didn't just inform, they moved. Not because they had perfect diction, but because they spoke from emotional truth. They channeled pain into wisdom and fear into courage. Their authenticity became their language. That's the secret of emotional psychology and leadership. You don't speak to manipulate emotion, you speak to meet it. You speak to bring understanding where confusion lives, calm where chaos brews, and hope where exhaustion sits. When you talk like that, your words don't just pass through ears, they sink into souls. People begin to feel lighter in your presence, not because you said something magical, but because your energy felt safe enough for them to drop their guard. And that's where transformation begins, not through persuasion, but through presence, through emotional honesty. To talk like a leader, you must learn the language of emotion, subtle, invisible, yet infinitely powerful. When you master it, you no longer speak to people. You speak through them, awakening what already lives inside. Because the purpose of communication isn't to change minds. It's to open hearts. And once hearts are open, minds follow naturally. This is the psychology of emotional connection, the unseen foundation of every powerful word. Now that you understand the emotional layer behind how leaders talk, let's go deeper into sound itself. In the next part, we'll explore the art of tone, pauses, and emotional resonance, and how silence, rhythm, and intention can turn even simple words into a voice of unshakable influence. And so, after learning to read the quiet intentions behind control, we begin to notice something deeper. That influence is not only in the words themselves, but in the space between them. Every leader, every teacher, every parent who ever moved a heart did, so not through what they said, but through how they said it. The voice carries more than language. It carries state. When we speak, our nervous system speaks first. The tone reveals what the mind tries to hide. You can tell when someone is pretending to be calm. The rhythm betrays them. You can sense when someone truly believes what they say. The pauses feel alive. Tone is vibration, and vibration is energy made audible. When a leader speaks, the energy behind their words travels directly into the emotional body of the listener. You might not remember their exact sentence, but you remember how they made you feel. That is emotional resonance, the invisible bridge between two inner worlds. The mistake many make is thinking that influence is built on the sharpness of speech. But power lives in presence, not performance. Presence slows you down. It makes you breathe between words. It allows silence to do half the talking. Silence, when chosen deliberately, is not emptiness. It is gravity. When a leader pauses, they give a listener room to think, to feel, to breathe. In that pause, trust is born. People sense authenticity not when someone fills every space with cleverness, but when they allow quiet to exist without fear. The pause tells your listener, I am not rushing to convince you. I am giving you space to understand. And that, more than argument, creates connection. Tone, pause, and resonance. These are not techniques. They are reflections of inner coherence. You can't fake them for long. Your tone is the echo of your emotional truth. If you speak with tension, the world feels your tension. If you speak with calm, people's bodies mirror your calm. The human mind may argue, but the nervous system listens. It knows when a leader's confidence is grounded and when it's performed. That's why even a single phrase spoken from genuine stillness can move crowds more than an hour of motivational noise. True tone mastery comes from emotional regulation. You can only speak softly when you no longer need to prove your strength. You can only use silence when you no longer fear being unheard. And you can only create resonance when you allow yourself to feel deeply without drowning in the feeling. Pause now. Think of the last time someone's voice changed your state. Not because of what they said, but because something inside them was steady when you were not. That is resonance. Two emotional fields synchronizing, the anxious one calming in the presence of the centered one. A leader's tone should not rise above others. It should ground them. The right tone doesn't inflate emotion. It contains it. It steadies a storm. It reminds people that clarity exists even in chaos. Every culture has words for this quality. In Japanese, it is ikigai or the quiet purpose. In Sanskrit, shani or peace made audible. In leadership, it is gravitas. Gravitas doesn't come from knowing everything. It comes from meaning every word you know. Even the simplest phrase, spoken with full awareness, becomes heavy with meaning. I understand. We'll find a way. It's okay. If the tone carries compassion. People heal through the sound before they process the logic. Emotional resonance is not manipulation. It is alignment. You're not trying to control how others feel. You're simply staying so present with your own feeling that it becomes safe for others to feel theirs. That's what makes tone powerful. It is contagious presence. A hurried tone transmits anxiety. A gentle tone transmits safety. A confident tone transmits possibility. A humble tone transmits trust. So before speaking, a leader should ask, what do I want my tone to communicate? Fear or safety, doubt or clarity? Then align breath and emotion until the answer lives in sound itself. Notice how great speakers instinctively use rhythm. They stretch certain syllables, let others fall softly. Their cadence is like music, repetition, rest, release. They know that tone and pause can sculpt emotion more effectively than any sophisticated vocabulary. When the tone rises slightly at the end of a phrase, it opens curiosity. When it falls, it closes thought. When it levels, it signals steadiness. Through this, the voice becomes an instrument of subtle direction, leading minds without commanding them. Even the spaces between sentences matter. In conversation, most people rush to fill silence. But great communicators rest there. They let the pause breathe. The pause says, I trust this moment. And when the speaker trusts the silence, the listener relaxes into attention. This is why some of the greatest leaders of history, from Lincoln to Mandela, often spoke slower than expected. They were not slow thinkers. They were deliberate transmitters. They knew that their tone had to carry the weight of a collective soul, not just personal conviction. As you listen to someone who embodies this, you notice a strange calm spreading through you. It's as if your own heartbeat synchronizes with theirs. That's not metaphorical. It's physiological. Studies show that when a calm person speaks, the listener's body mirrors their rhythm. This is resonance at its most human. Now think of the opposite, a tone filled with haste, ego, or hidden anger. Even if the words are polite, you feel the disturbance. It leaks through the tone. You tense without knowing why. This is how many conversations drain us. We are reacting not to language, but to the energy beneath it. That is why mastering tone begins with mastering self. Before you can speak peace, you must embody it. Before your words can inspire, your heart must already believe them. You can't fake emotional resonance. Your audience's body will know before their mind decides. Let your voice become an echo of your inner state. If you are centered, your tone will soothe. If you are honest, your tone will pierce. If you are compassionate, your tone will heal. When you speak, feel your breath as an anchor. Let your exhale carry the sentence. Feel each word touch the air as if it matters. Don't rush to fill silence. Allow it to frame your meaning. You will notice people listen longer. They feel safer. They respond not to your logic, but to your presence. When you learn to honor pauses, you begin to understand that silence is not an absence of communication. It's part of the sentence. Every symphony needs rest notes. Every heartbeat needs a moment between beats to sustain life. Speech is no different. In that quiet interval between phrases, the listener's mind paints meaning. Their emotions fill in the color of your tone. If you speak without pause, you rob them of participation. But when you pause with intention, you invite them into co-creation. They begin to feel the message instead of merely hearing it. The best communicators don't just manage pauses. They live them. They let the quiet be a mirror of their thought. A calm breath before continuing. A subtle glance that says, I'm here with you. Those moments, invisible to the impatient, are where trust blooms. Tone and pause together create rhythm, and rhythm builds memory. People remember the cadence of Martin Luther King Jr.'s I have a dream, not simply for words, but for the waves of tone and silence that carried them. Each pause gave permission for the audience to believe. Each rise and fall made the dream audible. When you practice this art yourself, notice how your body changes. The shoulders loosen, the heartbeat slows, the voice deepens. The words no longer chase attention. They attract it. Listeners lean forward, not because you demand it, but because your calm gives them space to enter. Resonance isn't created by clever phrasing. It's born when emotion in your voice matches the emotion you hope to awaken. If you wish to comfort, speak from comfort. If you wish to motivate, speak from clarity, not pressure. Your tone will always expose your true motive. And if you want to test the sincerity of any leader, don't analyze their speeches. Listen to their tone when they're interrupted. Authenticity reveals itself in unscripted moments. The way someone handles silence after disagreement says more about their leadership than any polished statement ever could. This is where emotional resonance meets moral character. A leader whose inner world is frantic will create noise. A leader whose inner world is order will create harmony. That harmony spreads outward. Teams feel safer. Ideas breathe easier. An environment becomes fertile for growth. Now imagine carrying this awareness into daily life. In a meeting, in an argument, in a moment of uncertainty, you pause before responding. You let the breath arrive. You speak slowly, honestly, tonally balanced. Watch how the energy shifts. What once felt tense softens. People hear the same idea differently because it arrives wrapped in peace instead of defense. To cultivate that ability, practice speaking while listening to yourself at the same time, not in a self-conscious way, but with awareness of how your words vibrate in your body. Notice when your throat tightens. That anxiety. Notice when your voice lowers and warms. That's authenticity. Train your tone by training your state. And remember, leadership through tone isn't about performing calm. It's about becoming calm. The more aligned your emotions, the more consistent your sound. Your tone becomes a tuning fork for the environment. If you hum at peace, others align. Even in writing, tone transcends medium. You can sense when a message was written in haste or grace. The energy behind expression always leaks through form. So every communicator, speaker, writer, teacher, parent, must guard the emotional quality from which they create. In time, you'll discover that the pause and tone are not merely tools for others. They're medicine for you. Speaking slowly teaches patience. Speaking gently teaches compassion. Pausing teaches surrender. When your tone harmonizes with your truth, your life starts to sound different. Conversations become lighter. Conflicts end faster. Influence stops feeling like effort. It becomes resonance. Because when you speak with a aligned tone, people don't just understand you, they feel understood. Pause. And that is the quiet power of leadership through voice. Not domination, not persuasion. Resonance. It's the sound of someone who has met their own silence and no longer fears it. It's the sound of steadiness in a world addicted to volume. It's the gentle authority that reminds everyone words matter less than the energy that carries them. When a leader understands this, every conversation becomes an opportunity to heal misunderstanding instead of deepening it. Every word becomes a bridge. Every pause becomes a moment of peace. So the next time you open your mouth to speak, remember, your tone is not just how you sound. It's who you are made audible. And perhaps that's what makes the greatest leaders unforgettable. They don't just speak to our minds. They resonate with our souls. And when the echo fades, something more profound begins. Silence. Because every true conversation needs its second half. Speaking is the inhale. Listening is the exhale. Without it, words become noise, direction without destination. The greatest leaders know this rhythm. They understand that to lead is to hear what others cannot say out loud. They listen, not for the answer they want, but for the truth that wants to be heard. When they step into a room, they read the pauses, the hesitations, the invisible tension between sentences. They sense what's unspoken, the sigh before the sentence, the glance that hides fatigue, the silence that screams uncertainty. Listening to them is not passive, it's participation. It's a dialogue with the unseen. They listen to people, to energy, to the moment itself. True listening requires humility, because to really hear another person is to admit that you do not already know. It demands presence, patience, and a kind of quiet courage, the willingness to let someone else's truth exist beside your own. When a leader listens deeply, they create safety, and safety is the soil where trust grows. Most people don't need perfect answers. They crave genuine attention. They want to feel that their voice matters in the larger rhythm. You can hear the difference between a leader who listens to respond and one who listens to understand. The first waits for an opening to speak. The second opens space for the other to breathe. In that difference lies the whole architecture of trust. People follow not because of hierarchy, but because of resonance. They follow the one who makes them feel seen. A great leader's silence is never empty. It's receptive. They hold space for another story without rushing to fix it. They let others untangle their thoughts aloud, knowing that in being heard, people often discover their own answers. The art of listening begins before words. It starts with the eyes that meet without judgment, with the posture that says, "I'm here," with the stillness that tells the speaker you're safe. That presence alone transforms the emotional temperature of a room. We all crave that kind of listener, the one who doesn't interrupt our becoming. And when we meet such a person, we remember them for life. Listening also teaches a leader about timing. Through silence, they sense when to step in and when to step back. They learn that not every moment requires advice. Sometimes the greatest wisdom is restraint. The world confuses noise with leadership, but history remembers the ones who heard what others ignored. The quiet observer who noticed a faint pulse of truth beneath the chaos of opinion. When you listen long enough, patterns reveal themselves. You start to hear not just individual voices, but the collective one, the hidden consensus, the silent pain, the emerging hope. That awareness allows decisions to serve more than ego. They begin to serve life itself. Listening is empathy in action. It's saying with your attention, you matter enough for me to be fully here. And in that moment, walls fall. Trust is not built through promises. It's built through presence. Each time a leader listens without judgment, someone learns that honesty is safe. Each time they remember details, a name, a fear, a dream, someone feels value beyond utility. This kind of listening can't be faked. Pretend to care, and the silence between your questions will expose you. But genuine interest vibrates through tone and timing. People feel when you are with them, not above them. To cultivate that, slow down. Before a conversation, quiet your inner noise. Suspend the urge to prepare replies. Let curiosity replace certainty. Ask not what I want to say, but what wants to be understood. You'll find that as you listen, your perception widens. You notice the tremor in a colleague's voice, the fatigue in a friend's smile, the hope tucked inside hesitation. You become fluent in the subtle languages of humanity. The reward is clarity. When you listen completely, information arrives whole, misunderstandings shrink, and solutions appear with less effort. Because truth no longer has to shout to be heard. Even conflict transforms. Arguments lose their venom when someone feels genuinely heard. Defensiveness melts into dialogue. The simple act of reflecting back what you've heard. So you're saying this, and it makes you feel that can dissolve days of tension. Leaders who master listening don't suppress emotion. They channel it. They know that behind anger there is usually fear. Behind resistance there is hurt. By listening for what's beneath the words, they guide the conversation toward healing instead of escalation. They also listen to silence itself. Sometimes a pause means uncertainty. Sometimes it means trust. A true leader doesn't rush to fill it. They let silence reveal its message. This practice builds credibility faster than any speech, because it anchors communication in respect. And respect, once felt, is rarely forgotten. Over time, people begin to mirror the way a true leader listens. They start to pause before reacting. They begin to speak with more care, because they've experienced what it feels like to be heard without judgment. In that space, trust becomes culture. Listening, then, is contagious. It spreads through example, not instruction. When a leader listens deeply, others unconsciously imitate the rhythm. Meetings shift from competition to collaboration. Conversations soften. Creativity rises. The human heart opens naturally in the presence of someone who listens. That's the paradox of influence. When you stop trying to control the room begins to follow your calm. Listening doesn't make a leader quiet. It makes their words count. When you speak less, people start to value what you do say. Your silence becomes a signal that your words are earned, not impulsive. In that way, listening sharpens communication. You no longer speak to fill emptiness. You speak to serve clarity. Every word becomes precise, purposeful, clean. You also begin to see that listening has layers. There's listening to content, the literal message. Then listening to emotion, the feeling under the message. And deeper still, listening to intention, what this person truly needs but might not know how to ask for. At that third level, listening turns into intuition. You start to hear what's missing, what's longing to be expressed. You notice when words contradict tone, when someone's laughter hides unease, when confidence is actually defense. This kind of listening can't be taught through technique. It emerges from compassion. The more you understand your own hidden emotions, the more you can recognize them in others. That's why great leaders are often those who have suffered and reflected. They've learned to hear pain without flinching. Trust deepens when people sense that you can handle their truth, when they realize that they don't have to filter or impress, that their humanity is welcome. They relax into authenticity. And authenticity is the foundation of any real connection. Leaders who listen create communities that heal. They turn teams into families, workplaces into ecosystems. They replace fear of judgment with curiosity, and over time, that curiosity becomes collective intelligence. There's also a spiritual quality to deep listening. It asks you to dissolve the ego, the part of you that wants to fix, prove, or perform, and simply be present. In that humility, you become a mirror for others to see themselves more clearly. You begin to hear life itself speaking through people, moments, and even silence. When you reach that point, listening becomes meditation in motion. You walk through life hearing meaning where others hear noise. You sense alignment or dissonance in a conversation, the way a musician senses when an instrument is slightly out of tune. And like a gentle tuner, you adjust through tone, pace, or pause, restoring harmony without force. Leaders who embody this awareness make others feel more intelligent, not less. They listen people into clarity. That is the highest form of leadership, to draw out the wisdom that already exists within others. Because trust is not a demand, it's a gift returned. And people give it freely to those who make them feel capable, not small. So how does one practice this daily? Start by noticing how often your mind prepares replies while others speak. Catch yourself. Return to the present. Let the person finish. When they do, pause before responding. Just a breath, a small silence of respect. That single moment transforms the dynamic. It signals, I heard you fully. Reflect back what you understood, not to prove attention, but to deepen it. Ask gentle questions that show you care about meaning, not victory. And when someone struggles to articulate something, offer patience instead of solutions. Do this often, and your presence will change. You'll find that people open up to you naturally. They'll start sharing ideas and truths they've never voiced before. Not because you asked, but because you listened. This is what builds unshakable trust. Not charisma, not charm, not words polished for applause. Trust is the byproduct of presence repeated over time, and it begins in the quiet act of listening. Soft pause. When you think about it, listening is the most profound form of love. It says, I value you enough to give you my full awareness. It's the opposite of distraction, the antidote to invisibility. And that's why it heals. Every leader who learns this will lead differently. They'll stop treating communication as a strategy and start treating it as connection. They'll stop trying to be impressive and start trying to be real. And the moment they do, trust will follow, quietly, naturally, irreversibly. Because in the end, leadership isn't about who speaks the loudest. It's about who listens the deepest. And so, as the last echoes of conversation fade, what remains is not the memory of power or persuasion, but presence. True leaders are not remembered for how much they spoke, but for how deeply they heard. Their silence carried weight. Their attention made others feel real. They didn't listen to respond. They listened to understand. And through that understanding, they built worlds of trust no title could command. When a person feels heard, they begin to heal. When a team feels heard, they begin to grow. And when a world feels heard, it begins to hope again. Leadership, at its most sacred level, is simply that, the courage to be still in a noisy world, to listen when everyone else speaks, to hold space for truth without rushing to fill it, because in the quiet patience of listening, trust is born, hearts align, and words finally mean something again.